Hello everybody and welcome back into the fort. My name is Tyler Saves Ya Bucks, and are you in line for the SpongeBob Secret Lair right now? If you are, good luck. And also, I have good news for you. I have 14 cards for under $14 that you can buy to make a thematic SpongeBob deck if you do, in fact, get the Secret Lair, because I know it's going to be pretty sought after. I also understand if you're not a big SpongeBob fan and you don't want to see SpongeBob in magic, it does kind of break the whole magical vibe of the game from, here and there. But I do think that magic is a lot about self-expression, and the more opportunity people have to spend their hard-earned money on cards that they want that, mean something to them, I'm happy about. And also, I'm a big SpongeBob fan, okay? I'm a millennial. My brother had cable when I would go and visit him, so I know a whole lot about SpongeBob. Sorry, Mike. And I am going to be showing you 14 cards that all have a tie-in to SpongeBob. So, getting into the list with a quick pit stop at the Commander, SpongeBob Squarepants, or Jody the Unifier, is all about legendary creatures and buffing them for the amount of legends that you have. And then when you cast a legendary spell, you basically cascade into another legendary non-land card. So I tried to make this list very thematic with SpongeBob, but also be powerful in a Joda shell. I just realized that's kind of nautical in and of itself. Okay, kicking off the 14, it's Glunch time. I was surprised when I looked at the list and I didn't see a specific Jellyfish card. We saw some in the art, but jellyfishing is such a big thing in the show, so let's give a legendary Jellyfish a little bit of a spotlight in this list. Glunch the Bestower is a 3-mana 0/5 flyer. Has a mouthful. At the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2/1/1 counters on a creature they control, choose a second player to draw a card, and then choose a third player. They make 2 treasure tokens. So like I said, I wanted to highlight something that happens so often in the show, Patrick and SpongeBob running around catching jellyfish. So Glunch is a great, kind of play on that aspect of having fun for everybody. And at the same time, your commander giving it +X/+X. This could turn into a really big beater in the air, kind of like that episode where there was the giant jellyfish. It was like the Jellyfish King or something like that. Moving on to Mocking Doppelganger, or in this case, DoodleBob. So DoodleBob, SpongeBob drew a version of himself, I believe, with a magic pencil that fell from a cartoonist's. I'm not going to get into it, but it's basically the one thing that SpongeBob really hated more than anything else, it seemed, which we don't see that too often when it comes to our favorite Sponge. But when I read Mocking Doppelganger, it just worked far too perfect with the name in and of itself. And I know in this case, it doesn't copy something of yours, so you can't copy your own SpongeBob. But the fact that whatever you copy, you goat it, I think is really kind of thematic for SpongeBob and DoodleBob's relationship, where SpongeBob really wanted to take DoodleBob down. So that felt like goating to me. Moving on again to Zara Renegade Recruiter, or the Flying Dutchman. This is one of my favorite characters. I love the episode where he goes and steals Patrick, SpongeBob, and Squidward and puts them on the ship. And, don't worry, Captain, we'll buff out those scratches. All right, I also tried to look a little bit SpongeBob-y today, so it ended up being kind of Patrick-y. But I'll try and keep the SpongeBob stuff to a minimum if you don't know much about it. But in the case where the Flying Dutchman took everybody and put them on the ship, I felt like Zara would capture that very well. It's a 5-mana 4/3 with flying. When she attacks, look at defending player's hand. You may put a creature card from among it into the battlefield tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. Return it to their hand at the beginning of the next end step. So you basically attack somebody and you take one of their things. And then if you happen to take a legendary, SpongeBob will give it a big boost. So it is thematic in the sense that you're stealing things, and it's very synergistic if you happen to steal the right thing. Speaking of the Flying Dutchman and his ship, the Indomitable is the next card on the list. Again, it's a legendary permanent. This one is a vehicle for 4 mana. It's a 6/6 with trample. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, crew 3, and then it has a way to recast it, which you can't really do in the deck, but maybe. Who knows? As I said before, I love that episode where they all go onto the ship, so I wanted to capture that again here. And it's just a very good value player in the deck, allowing you to hit people, draw some cards, but at the same time, it's a 6/6 with trample. You crew this, all of a sudden it is now a legendary creature, and SpongeBob gives it a massive boost. It has trample. You're going to be dealing a lot of damage. Don't worry, Captain. We'll buff out those scratches. Okay, moving on. Bulk up. Or in this case, the blow up muscles that SpongeBob had in that episode. Listen, this isn't just a side note for my bulk up series that you can read on Commander's Herald. It will probably be somewhere over here. It's also just very good in the deck. Doubling the power of target creature for the turn is super strong when you're buffing all of your creatures so much, so that if somebody lets, I'll let the smallest through, it's a 7/7, but I'm not going to take all that damage. And then boom, bulk up, make it 14 out of nowhere. Very strong, and it has flashback as well if you really need to close out the game later on. So bulk up, you are in the list because you deserve to be in the list, not just because I have a series named after you. Red Death, the Shipwrecker, is Larry the Lobster. This is a 2 mana 1/3. It has Alluring Eyes. Tap to go target creature an opponent controls. That player draws a card and you add red. So in the show, Larry is kind of like an object for SpongeBob to envy. Like the bulk up thing is an example where he wanted to look as strong and impress Gary and, all the other buff fish in the sea. So again, that feels a little bit like goading, but also Larry, if I'm remembering correctly, was kind of a consummate, if that's the right word, positive person. So he would consistently be like, yeah, SpongeBob, you're looking good, like that type of thing. So the fact that you goad something and then also they draw a card, I feel like plays into that. And I know Red Death is a crab and Larry is a lobster, but just work with me, people. I'm trying here. Next up, we have Jiru and Hazaret, I believe. That's how you say. It's Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. So, again, this is a Legendary Matters deck. This card is very Legendary Matters, but I do think it works thematically. But let me read it here first. It is 5 mana, red, white, and 2 for a 5/4. As long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, it has Vigilance and Haste. And then when it attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may exile a legendary creature from among them. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. And then until end of turn, you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. So, in the show, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, one of the actual good things that Mermaid Man can still do is call to the sea creatures and like try and get them to fight for him. And that felt a little bit thematic here with being able to cast something off the top of your library, as well as the fact that the whole deck is built around legendaries. So it's going to synergize and help drive that power through. Thassa, God of the Sea, as Neptune. This is another way to drive damage through in this deck, as well as being a legendary permanent. It is 2 and a blue for a 5/5 indestructible. You have to have devotion or else it is not a creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. So some good card selection. And then 2 mana for target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. So in this deck where you're buffing all of your big creatures, allowing 1 to be able to get through is great. 2, 3, 4, if you have enough mana to activate Thassa or Neptune, you can make a lot of your creatures unblockable. And I'll say I have a Joda deck, and the board can get very, very powerful very fast. So something like this to just allow a few through might take some players out of the game. Maybe I'll talk about my Joda deck, because it's not a straightforward one. Maybe someday. Let me know if you are interested in that. Goreclaw, Terror of Cal Sisma, is the Sea Bear. Sea Bear, the camping episode, great episode. I believe there's a song in that. I can't remember what it is right now, but this is just a very good value piece in the deck because of the fact that creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. And then when it attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. It's a 4 mana 4/3. I'm sure you can see it. It's right there. So in the deck, why this is so good is because you're going to be buffing up some of these really big creatures. You're making Glunch from a 0/5 to 10/15 or whatever it is, right? But if they have blockers, it's not going to do too much. Whereas the Sea Bear can come in and boost everything a little bit more and give it trample. That's really, really strong. And at the same time, if you have some of these cards in your hand when you haven't had SpongeBob to cascade into, all of a sudden now some of them cost 2 less to cast and you can get them out of your hand. So Goreclaw, you're the Sea Bear. Deal with it. Speaking of dealing with it, we have Marvo Deep Operative. Yeah. It's Squilliam Fancyson. This is Squidward's most heated rival throughout the show, and they're constantly clashing with each other when they share the screen. So Marvo is a 5 mana 1/8 octopus rogue. When it attacks, clash with defending player. You can see the flavor text of what to do when you clash. But when you win a clash, draw a card, and you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value 8 or less without paying its mana cost. So again, kind of like the Sea Bear, you might have some stuff in your hand that you want to be able to get out, and cheating it is a great way. Also, this deck has a lot of high value creatures. And then like if you look up the Patrick card, I think it's like 7 or 8 mana or something too. So you can possibly win a lot of the clashes. And I think it's just very, very thematic with, Squilliam being such a nuisance to everybody, even to the point where people want to get on Squidward's side to get back at him. Getting close to the end, we have Grothama, all devouring as the Alaskan bull worm. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase this card. 5 mana for a 10/8. Other creatures, all creatures basically can, instead of attacking, they can fight this. And then when it leaves the battlefield, each player draws cards equal to the amount of damage dealt to Grothama this turn by sources they controlled. So it's like a side quest. Everybody can say, all right, instead of attacking, all my creatures are going to fight Grothama, and in turn be able to kill it, and then we'll draw cards when you do that. Other creatures have this. Your creatures have it as well. So when everything is getting buffed so big, if you really need to draw a bunch of cards, Grothama is not just going to be a 10/8 in this deck. It can be huge. So you could possibly fight it yourself, draw some cards, but also if it's huge and you're giving it evasion in some way with like the trample or the unblockable, it's going to feel big, scary, and pink. Moving on to Lava Spur Boots. These are the Squeaky boots from the episode where it was like that Edgar Allan Poe novel or short story. It's under the floorboards. Okay, either way, it is a 1 mana equipment that equips for 1, and equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has haste and ward 1. So it's really just a thematic include here, but also it's a good thing to have around, giving some of your good, I'm not going to say good again, putting some of your thematic and strong pieces in this deck. A little bit more protection, and then the haste is really nice that you can drop something down that's really big and then attack through right then and there, and a little bit more power boost. This deck is going to be very strong. My cat, I don't know if anybody can see her back there. She is asleep on the fort that's behind me, and she is snoring, and I can hear her little squeak. So if you hear that's what that is. Two more cards here, and then I'll let you get back to the line so you can get that secret lair. Mrs. Puff is Commander Sophia Daggery. This is a 4-mana 1/3 with flash. It has crash landing. When she enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target legendary permanent. That permanent's controller creates a junk token. So throughout the show, SpongeBob cannot get his driver's license, so every time he gets in the car with Mrs. Puff, they go almost on a rampage, and Mrs. Puff blows up because she's a pufferfish, and it's always a big catastrophe, so it's very fitting that she would come in, boom, blow something up on impact. Also, this card is only like 20 cents, and it's not too bad. The fact that it has flash, that you destroy a legendary permanent. Most things are legendary right now. And if you cascade into this, it will kind of blow people out, because not only are you dealing a bunch of damage, but then this lands and you destroy somebody's commander or something. Moving on to the final one on the list. This is funny because it's a crossing of universes, much like the last one. That was a Fallout card. The Shire is the Krusty Krab, and I'll explain why. It has a legendary type, so that's nice. It synergizes with the deck. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped unless you control a legendary creature, so it could come in untapped, most likely in this deck. Taps for green, and then you can tap 2 mana and tap it. Tap an untapped creature you control, create a food token. That's a lot of the word tapped. So why I felt that this was the Krusty Krab is you're basically taking any of your creatures, putting them into the kitchen at the Krusty Krab, and they go to work and make you a Krabby Patty. So I just had this, like, I didn't want it to be the Shire because it's so specific, another media franchise, but it's just too perfect. And I think the Shire is, it's kind of similar to the Krusty Krab, right? Maybe. So there you have it, 14 thematic cards that you can slot into your SpongeBob, the Squarepants, nautical nonsense, thematic, under the sea, are you ready, kids? Aye, Captain deck. That should be the name of every one of these decks. So let me know how I did with matching magic with the themes of the series, as well as just like some of the art and the flavor. Let me know how I did, and if it was a synergistic include for a lot of these in order to make this deck pretty strong and formidable to crush your enemies with SpongeBob, who's doing the imagination thing. It's a quite interesting contrast. I wrote an article about this exact thing, which I will link to here. And I have another article coming out very soon, or it might already be out. I'm not sure how time works anymore. I've been at the bottom of the ocean trying to ask people, like, do you think this is Larry the Lobster? And they weren't answering me. So let me know how I did once again in the comments. And I hope to see you either at Commander's Herald or back here next time in the fort. Goodbye.